This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen, resolved. Thorndike's law of effect tells us that when satisfaction follows an action, it is more likely to be repeated. Second affirmative. Today, we have to understand what is the effectiveness of penalties versus incentives. First and foremost, what is a person's goal in a low-developing country? Ladies and gentlemen, it has been proven that in a low-developing country, a person's goal is to provide food as well as basic needs for themselves. They're not going to stop and think about how pollution is affecting them when they barely even have food, ladies and gentlemen, or clothes to wear. So that is not a point to talk about. The point is, how will we get them to care about recycling? If we can provide an incentive, if we can provide an incentive such as a financial reward attached to recycling, they won't look at it as recycling. They will look at it as another way of earning income, especially for the poor people in Uganda that make up 30% of Uganda's nation today. Not taken. That shows how the behavioral psychology plays a very big part. Positive reinforcement encourages more people to participate in recycling programs because they are thinking of income that comes with recycling these things. They know that with each and every type of waste they recycle and take to the recycling centers and collection centers, they are earning. That is the behavioral psychology behind Thorndike's law of effect. Next, we look at how the rewards appeal to a broad demographic. In this, people who are not swayed by environmental arguments they're actually brought into the picture, and they look at how, and through this, they are actually educated about how recycling is helping their environment. It is reducing pollution, it is preventing the spread of these diseases that affect them, and it is conserving their natural resources, of which Uganda uses them in their tourism industry to gain more money. This is touching the people's hearts and making them more open to recycling programs. I'll take your POI.
So are you in agreement that I can be satisfied if I am not fined for littering?
I beg your pardon?
Are you in agreement that I can be satisfied if I am not penalized for littering or not recycling?
How can one live in fear and be satisfied? That's the simple answer. They are creating fear in the people of these low-developing countries. But let's be honest. My first affirmative came and told you about the low administrative capacity of these countries. This is a low-developing country, ladies and gentlemen. Even in our own taxes, we are able to evade them. And people live very comfortably while evading taxes. Do you think that they can't evade other laws? It has happened before, and that's why our landfill sites receive 1,500 tons of rubbish with low collection rates and low recycling rates. People are avoiding your penalties and your law's negative side. Next, we must look at the fact that the effectiveness and efficiency is through our participation rates. In countries like Sweden, we have seen that their recycling systems are similar to deposit return systems, and these systems are actually effective in that people are taking their waste back to these recycling centers and they are actually getting paid for it. But then, I beg to rest my case and stand to win as affirmative.
Globally, over 380 million tons of plastic waste is produced, and only 9% of all this is recycled. In Uganda, over 600 tons of plastic waste is produced. Less than 10% of all this is recycled. According to the United Nations, the best way to fix the situation of low levels of recycling is the implementation of policies and legislation to improve waste management and hold polluters accountable. This is according to stories.undp.org. Team Negative, Lakeside College, Luzira, Aaron Kalinaki. So our burden as Team Negative is to prove or to illustrate why we should focus more on penalizing non-compliance rather than on incentivizing participation. Now, before I dig deep into the meal we have prepared for you, allow me talk about a few things from our antagonistic team. So, Precurrent speaker came and asked and posed us a question of how effective is sensitization in Uganda. And the adjudicators, I would like to inform you that sensitization in Uganda is very effective. We could pick a leaf from the immunization of the killer diseases in the country. Sensitization has led to mass immunization of the population of this country. So the issue of effectiveness of sensitization is not an issue. Then effectiveness of fear. We can look at how fear for their lives has greatly reduced riots and protests in the country between 2021 and 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, fear is very effective. Now, onto our lines of argument. We have three major lines of argument. One is inadequate funding, which is moving in conjunction with revenue generation. Then two is sustainability. And lastly is going to be penalties, and penalties are inclusive and far-reaching, while incentives are selective. One at a time. Inadequate funding. So incentive programs can be expensive when compared to penalties on non-compliance. We pick a leaf and a case study from the United States. In the United States alone, it's estimated that local government spends around $1.5 billion annually on recycling programs. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a lot of money. This is according to researchgate.net. But on the other hand, revenue is actually generated from penalizing non-compliance. This is through fines which are levied. This is through the fines which are levied on people who fail to comply and the fees they have to pay in order to get out of these cases. We can pick a case study from Rwanda. The tough laws stipulated a penalty of 50,000 Rwandan francs, which is $52 for individuals dumping plastics in public space, and 5 million Rwandan francs, which is $5,220 for companies not adopting to proper waste management, such as recycling. This is an article by James Tasamba, 22nd July 2020, on Anadala Ajonis. Now, basically, the weight is between two things. One is incentives, which take money from the government. Two is penalties, which bring money to the government. Then we move to the second line of argument. Over-reliance on incentives might lead to a decrease in participation in recycling if these incentives are removed or reduced. We go back to look at the statistics in the US. This is a lot of money. I said it is $1.5 billion. This is a lot of money. How many countries can sustain these incentives year after year? Now, when it comes to reduction of these incentives, there will be reduction in recycling. Why? People will no longer be motivated. Then, as I conclude our last line of argument, penalties affect everyone, unlike incentives, which affect a relatively small percentage of the population. So penalties actually enforce compliance due to the fear of punishment, while incentives where not all people are interested in them. The fear is instilled because of the fines, the imprisonment, damage of reputation, and business closure when you fail to comply. This is according to www.netpo.com. In the long run, penalizing non-compliance will generally change behavior, making recycling a habit. I would like to rest my case.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.